Abhishek,
Yes.
uh, in class 3, not yesterday, class 3, when we are doing the copy data activity,
Yeah.
from the source, we are copying the file from input folder to the output folder, which is in the same container.
Mm.
Mm,
Yes.
so that is one, we can move the data from one file to another file from the different container also, which is in cloud or on premise. uh,
Yes. Yeah. So you can move from a same container to different container. You
yeah.
can move to one source to another source as well. Like suppose if your source is on-premise server, which I have given a homework, right, to make a link service for MS SQL Server on-premise.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I'll
you
do
can,
that.
yeah. So have you checked that?
No, that is, I got two times
Yeah,
error.
yeah. So you have Mac, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So but what you can do is you can make blob storage and also data lake Gen 2, like two storage, and then source you can choose as blob storage. Sync you can choose as data lake Gen 2, and then you can move the file from there as well. That also you can try.
Okay, I'll try that one. And I did not do homework today. I'll do that
Yeah,
because
yeah, no problem.
sometimes I got error, that
Yeah,
auto, that runtime error.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll do today. Yeah, thank you.
Uh, and also, guys, yesterday after the class, like missed to stop the recording, and I left the meeting, and I was in the meeting like for 4 hours. So the recording for yesterday class is now 5 hours, and I'm not able to just like export that recording. So what I will do is I will share the yesterday's class recording of a different class, but I am teaching the same topic. So by looking at that as well, you can practice. And but I won't be able to share the recording of the yesterday class like what we had because that recording is 5 hours now and I'm not able to export it. But I will share the same recording of a different class which you can go through anyways. Okay. So what we will learn today? We will today understand how to move the data from data lake to SQL Server. That is what we'll understand today. Which means how to move the data from data lake or a blob storage to SQL Server in the cloud. Okay, so that is what we will understand. So using data factory that we will do, and to move the data from data lake to SQL Server using data factory, we need a link to blob storage. We need a link to SQL Server, right? Then only we can move the data using data factory to blob storage to SQL Server, right? So if I want to move the data, if I move the data from data lake to blob to SQL Server, from data lake to SQL Server using data factory. from here to here, right? So basically, we need a link to this in data factory, and we need a link to this in SQL in data factory. Then only it can be done. And both are cloud. Both are cloud. This is also cloud, and this is also cloud. And in my assumption, you guys already tried this one, like which to move the data from on-premise server to cloud by making a link service. If you haven't tried it, please try it. So make MS SQL Server on-premise, make a link service, and move the data to data lake from here to here by making a link service, right? But this is what we'll cover today, how to do this. And to do this, first of all, we need a data lake, and we have a link service of data lake as well in the data factory. So this is sorted. So this one is sorted because in data factory, I do have a link service already for my data lake. Here I do have a link service for my data lake, right? Similarly, I need to make a link service for my cloud SQL server. Similarly, I need to make a link service for my cloud SQL server. And for that, I need first of all a SQL server in cloud, that then only I can make a link service, right? Simple. So first ask is to make a SQL server in the cloud and then make a link service of data factory of that SQL server, right? Then only we will be able to move the data, right? Simple. Now, first we'll make a SQL server in the cloud, and then inside the SQL server we'll make a SQL database in the cloud, and then we will make a link service of that SQL server, right? Simple. Three procedure we'll do. First of all, we make a SQL server, then we'll make a SQL database, and then we'll make a link service to that SQL server in the cloud, right? Any confusion till here, guys? And I hope as end is clear what we are trying to approach, right? And also it's very important to understand what is SQL server, what is SQL database, and what is SSMS. Sometimes people get confused in that as well. So we have a SQL server. In one SQL server, you can make multiple SQL databases. Okay. In one SQL server, you can make multiple SQL databases. Okay. And SSMS, which is SQL Server Management Studio, is just a way to access your server, a cloud server. Okay. So SSMS is a way to access your. This diagram is messy, so I will try to make a new one for you guys. We have a data factory, we have data lake, we have SQL server, and inside SQL server we will have multiple databases. And SSMS is just a way to access this SQL server. Just like to watch Netflix movies, you have a Netflix app, right? But movies are stored in the server, right? Movies are not in there in the app. You just download the app, and through the app you are able to access the movies. So similar to that, you have a SSMS, which is a tool through which you can access your cloud SQL or cloud database. And there is many other tools through which you can do it, but SSMS SQL Server Management Studio is one of the tool, right? And then you have a SQL Server, and through SSMS you can access your on-premise SQL database, and also you can access cloud SQL database. It is just a tool. So these are the databases. database 1, database 2, database 3, and you have data lake, and you have data factory. Okay, we are approaching this. So first of all, I am making a SQL server in the cloud. So I'm going over here. I will type SQL server, open this, create SQL server. Okay, server name, location. Location is Central India. Authentication method, there are Microsoft Entra ID as well for the authentication, which is like related to what sort of email ID you have and all of those things. But like we are using currently just a normal authentication of ID and password. Okay, so I'm giving ID and password here. When you are giving ID and password, please note down your ID and password because it will be used going forward, right? So please note down your ID and password. Please remember it. So what are the things I have changed? I given the server name. I given the authentication. I have given the admin password. Networking is by default. Security is by default. Additional setting is by default. Right, everything is by default. I'm not changing anything. Whatever is default, I'm just using the same setting. We are not changing anything. The settings which we have changed is we have just given the server name and then we have used the SQL authentication and everything is default. We are not changing anything beside that. And then review and create. Okay, I'm not creating it right now because I do have a SQL server with my computer, but this is how you can create a SQL server. Okay, any confusion on the creating a SQL server, guys, please let me know. Okay, so then review and create. I'm not creating it because I do have a SQL server with me which I can use. This one is my SQL server. Now in this SQL server we can create a SQL database. So I will go and type SQL database here and I will open this SQL database. Now create SQL database. Now give your subscription, your resource group, your database name, right? Your database name, your server name which you have just created. Okay, so here you need to consider give your server name which you just created, and then everything is by default. This particular step is very important, compute and storage. Okay, so here we need to configure our database and we need to select the for the practice, because what is this configure? Here you can select what should be the computing power or what should be the speed of your SQL server. So if you are using a free subscription and also if you're using a pay as you go model, then in that case you just select the basic SQL database for which the cost will be less, right? The cost will be less. If you select the budget friendly, the high one, then the cost is very more, like very high. Then in that case it will cost you more money Instead of that, select the very basic SQL database. This is the basic one which you can select, and the cost for this one will be low. Okay, so select this one only. Very important steps. So don't forget to configure your SQL database. And then everything, networking will be default, security will be default. We will not change anything. Additional setting, in the additional settings, select the sample. What it will do, it will give you some sample data set to practice. Okay, select the sample one. Okay, so you can, if you have some backup, that also you can restore, and you can select the sample one, which will give you some sample data set to practice. Okay, so you can select the sample one. What are the settings which we need to change? We need to select our, we need to give a server name, right? Then we need to configure our compute and storage. We need to select the computing power of our database. And then in the additional setting, we need to select the sample one, that will create a sample data set for, say, data set for you to practice and then review and create. Okay, I'm not creating it because I do have a SQL database in which we can practice together. Any confusion on this, guys? Okay, so once you create this SQL database, and if you have SSMS, which is SQL Server Management Studio installed, you can log in to your on-premise, like in the computer as well. You can directly log in by giving these details. What are the details you need to give? So by using SSMS, you can log into this SQL database and also your on-premise SQL database. Okay, that is just a tool. So if you have active internet connection, you can connect to this SQL database as well by giving all of this server name, database name information. So here you will get all of those information, like a server name, and then there you can select SQL authentication in the SSMS, and then you can log into the SQL database, right? And you can log into the SQL Server from the query editor as well. So here, from here as well, you can log in. Like this as well, you can log in, right? But it is not, this particular UI is not so friendly, so I suggest you log in from the SSMS. That will give you the better look and feel. And in the company, we don't use this query editor. Why I'm not showing you in the SSMS? Because that, like, my laptop runs a bit slow, so I'm not able to download that software here in my computer. But if anybody has that, I can just you can share the screen, I can show you if you're not able to do that. Okay, so just try to log in SSMS using the SQL database, right? And then these are the sample data set. As I told you that you will get some sample data set to practice. So here, these are the some sample data set which you can use to practice, right? So we have made SQL Server, we have made SQL database, right? So this is SQL Server is made, SQL database. One of the SQL database we have made it. Similarly, if you want to create another SQL database, that also you can do in the same server, right? But we created one SQL database in that server. And also my suggestion is, don't run. So suppose in the server as well, don't run create database command, that you don't run. Okay, uh, that will create a general purpose SQL database directly. So don't run that. Okay, so create database from here only, right? Now, open question to everyone. Here, anyone is there who is not aware anything about SQL and haven't worked in SQL in the past and zero knowledge about SQL database? Anybody is present in the class who don't know anything about SQL? If you don't know, please let me know so that I can teach accordingly, I can guide accordingly. So anybody is there in the class who doesn't have any SQL knowledge?
Abhishek,
Mhm.
I worked in SQL a long back. Only know the SQL Server Management Studio having Northwind Master and all that database, sample database. Then we just create the stored procedure and some
Yeah,
queries.
that is enough. That is
That is
enough. So
enough,
if
right?
you know SQL, what is SQL, you know what is SQL database, you
Yeah.
know what is create table schema, you know what is stored procedure, right? So
Yes,
that
yes.
knowledge is enough. I want that knowledge only. I don't. So sometimes there is few people are Like there are few people who just don't haven't heard about SQL database in the past. So I can expect everybody knows about SQL here. Okay, fine. So for that, I don't need to elaborate what is SQL in general, what is SQL database in general, and all of those things, right? So everybody knows about it. Okay, so we can go forward now. Sometimes, not sometimes, you will get an error over here. What kind of error over here which you can get while login? That I will tell you now. So here, if I go to SQL Server now, then if I go to networking, one second, it's taking time. Let me refresh it. Okay, anyways, it's opening, but like till the time it's opening, let's go to some other things as well. I will show you what I'm talking about once it opens. So yeah, once we have a SQL database and also once we have a SQL server, sorry, once we have a SQL server and then you create a SQL database inside that SQL server, we will create a link service in Data Factory for that SQL server so that we can move the data, right? Simple. And which integration runtime we will use in that case for cloud SQL server? Anybody can answer this question. Which integration runtime we will use in this case?
Default option.
Yeah, default integration runtime. So we'll go to link service and then we'll select Azure SQL Server, SQL database, and then we'll use the default integration runtime. We will select our subscription, we will select our server name, we will select our database name, give SQL authentication, we'll give the username, give the password, test connection. Looks fine, create it. Okay, I'm not creating it because I do have a link service for me which I can use. This is how you can create a link service, right, to move the data to SQL server. Okay, once you have a link service, then let's make a simple copy to our SQL server, right? Then I will paste a copy data activity. I will go to source. I will define my source, which is data lake, CSV file. Select the source, or yeah, we can use a parameterized data set as well, which we created. So here I can do source data lake, parameterized data set, right? And then I can give my container name, which is input, folder, okay, and then department.csv, right? In the sync as well, you can do the same thing. So for SQL Server as well, let's create a parameterized data set. So we'll create a data set, a SQL data set, link service is this, and we'll create two parameters. Why two parameter? One for the schema, one for the table name. Here we'll pass the parameter accordingly, simple. So all of this can be hard coded, right? I'm not doing the hard coding. I'm doing it with the parameters so that you get a understanding of the parameters, right? And then I can call my data set directly. And here I can write my schema name, which is DBO, and then suppose table name is department.csv. Department, not .csv because this is SQL, right? Yeah, this is what I was talking about. Here, so suppose sometimes it can happen that currently I was able to log into this SQL database because SQL server because my IP is allowed in that SQL server, right? So what is my IP address? My IP address is 88.130.147.26. This is my IP. So every computer has an IP address. So my IP address 88.130.147.26, right? This is my IP address. Either I can allow my IP address, or currently in this case I have allowed all the IP address. So I have allowed your IP address as well, my IP address, for everybody IP's address, because I have allowed 0.0.0.0 till 255.255. So all the IPs are allowed. So in the Netflix app, every one of us are able to log in by user ID and password. Reason of that is they have allowed all the IP, right? So ideally, in that server, if they allowed all the IPs, then we can just log in, right? So here I have allowed all the IP, but in real case, you just allow the client IP address. You don't allow all the IP address, right? So I have allowed all the IP address so that during the class we don't face any challenges. But you can only allow your client IP so that, yeah, that is also okay. Or you can allow some range of it. That also you can do, right? So yeah, so here come here and then add a firewall, allow all the IP address, and then you will be able to log in sometimes if there is an error, right? And then you make a link service, right? And sometimes it can have also happen that if you don't allow all the IP, then here also when you make a link service, it can throw error because data factory can also reach out to that. So suppose as a Abhishek as a user, you try to log into this SQL server with IP address. So this IP address should be allowed in the SQL server. Similarly, data factory using link service will log into this SQL server by using IP address, right? So this IP address should be also whitelisted, right? And it will show you this IP is not whitelisted. So this kind of two error can come, and that you can resolve by allowing all the IP or whitelisting the specific IP address of Abhishek or either data factory, right? So these are the things you guys can do. Now I am going to SQL database to show you that when I will move the data, how it will look. Now I want to move the data here. I have done all the settings. Now currently, when I want to move the data in SQL Server, I need a schema for that as well, right? So every table has a schema. Here also, if you see, this table has a schema, right? So when I'm moving the data to SQL Server, I need a schema for that. So if I choose the auto create table option, it will automatically create a schema for you and then move the data. So whenever, if we are moving the table for the first time, we need to create a schema of that table, right? So what are the columns are present, and then what are the like values should be there, and all of that you need to mention. But here we are choosing auto create table option. So what data factory will do, data factory will create a schema for you and then move the data. Okay, and I hope everybody here are aware about what is table schema. Anybody who is here who is not aware about what is table schema? Okay, so let's run this now. Done. Now if I come here, if I refresh my tables, DB or department is present. And also if you see, it actually moved the data with an varchar schema, right? And varchar. Now, when you move the data from data lake, right now you are trying to move the data from data lake to SQL server. So what data factory has done? Data factory, because here your CSV file is present as a flat files, okay? Then it actually move the data with the n varchar schema, because it's playing safe side. It is just considering as a default n varchar schema and then move the data. But now when you say that, Abhishek, I don't want n varchar schema, I want a proper schema here, right? Because my department ID is integer, okay? In that case you need to define the schema first and then move the data, right? Because sometimes why n varchar is not like a good data type, because like in n varchar you cannot do the calculation, right? Suppose if I want to do some department ID sum, I won't be able to do it because it's not like the column for the sum and all of that, right? So you need to cast it into the integer. Then only you can do it. Okay. So suppose if I want to define the proper schema and then if I want to move my table, I will do create table and then dbo department X, for example, and then de- and then suppose department ID integer and name equals to varchar, right? 20. So here now I will move the data using not auto create table option. I will choose none option and here I will write department X table so that it moves the data into that table, which is my created schema now. Okay, and here you can see this table right now as well. That table will be created department X with this data types, right? So now let's move the data into this table. Yeah, probably the character of the name is greater than 20. That is why it's throwing the error. So I will create another table which is Y and increase it to 50, for example, because the values which we are inserting probably is greater than 20. So I will do Y and then again move the data to Y table now. Yeah, now if I go here, if I refresh this, if I click to the Y, I am able to see the data, right? This is my data. Now suppose any confusion on this, guys? Do you have any confusion? Now suppose if you say that Abhishek, I don't want to move the department ID. I want to name my column as department Y. Okay. And sorry, department Z, and I want to name my column name as ID, not department ID, right? So how to do this in that case? ID, right? If I give ID and then I create a table, and if I create a table over here as department Z, in which it is ID, not department ID, right? And if I run this as it is, it will throw error to me. It got failed. Any idea, guys, how we can resolve this? I have already taught you guys how it can be done.
Using the mapping.
Yes, using the mapping feature. Yes, you're right. So we'll go to the mapping feature. We'll import the mapping feature. And then we'll select the column department ID and we'll map it to ID now. Done. Now suppose now if I run this copy data activity, if I run it again, for example, right? Suppose if I set the trigger and then if I'm running it again and again every day. Now, like I am running this table, like this particular pipeline again, right? So what will happen here? What will happen here? It will reload the data. In case of data lake, it was overwriting every time, but here it will reload the data every time. So suppose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 13, and then again 13, right? If I run it again, then it will again reload the data. And I don't want to do it. I don't want to basically, whenever we are running the copy data activity, I don't want to duplicate my data in the every load. So how to handle this particular case? In that case, you need to truncate your table. Specify a script for the copy data activity to execute before writing the data into the sync table in each run. You can use property to clean up the preloaded data, right? So I will write truncate table dbo dot department z to truncate the preloaded data, basically, right? And then load the data again. So what it will do, it will run this script in the in your SQL script, SQL database first, and then load the data. In that way, you truncate your table and then load the data, right? That's what it you will do now. Done. Now if I come here, if I refresh this again, then till 13 is there, right? It is not like duplicated. So this is how you can truncate your table and load the table again. Now suppose now in the table, suppose you have some changes, okay? And what you want to do, you want to update those changes instead of like truncating your table and loading it again. You just want to do the update. Okay, I will show you. Suppose information technology, we are calling it as IT now. Okay, and there is an extra department which we added as 14th. Suppose training Azure, okay, Azure, suppose for example. And now what I want to do, like suppose this table is anyways small, but if you're getting suppose like 1 million record, and now you just want to update the record. So it's not feasible to just like truncate the whole data and upload it again, right? So in that case, we will just do the update and insert for the new record, right? Like update the record which is changed and insert the record which got updated by matching the primary key department ID. So what data factory will do? Data factory will go to the SQL database, try to find out which ID is already there and then update it. If it is not there, then it will insert it. So for that, we'll use the absurd concept. We'll select the key column, select the ID, right? And then we will remove the truncate and insert because truncate is not dated. We are not truncating it. We are doing the absurd update and insert. Update when the primary key is there and insert when the primary key is not there. Now if I open this, if I refresh run this, this got updated to IT. See, and then now one more record got inserted, which is Azure, right? So this is how you can do the absurd. Okay, absurd. So what are the things we have learned? How to do the mapping, how to do the absurd, how to do the truncate and load, and how to define the schema, load it, and then truncate the table, load it, right? So all of this we can do. Any confusion on this, guys?
Abhishek, if we want another column to add in that, so we initially do that. In between, we cannot do like how you update the record or adding in ups using the upsert.
So if you want to add additional column here, you can do it, but only the default column you can do it, right? So suppose if you want to add a column name and all of that, but if you want to like add a column, suppose if you say that Abhishek, I want to add two columns, like whatever is there, and then I want to add it, then for that there is a separate activity, data flow activity, which you have to use. But suppose this particular option I have given it in the homework, right? So here you just want to, if you want to add a file name, or if you want to add at what time you have copied, all of those addition you can do by using this. But if you want to do some sort of additional column, then that is a data transformation activity, then you need to use a different activity for that. That I will teach going forward how we can do it.
Okay.
Okay guys, so this is what I wanted to cover for today. So homework for the today's class is to make SQL server and SQL database, whitelist the IP, make link service, then move the data using auto create, then define the schema and move the data, right? And then change the column name and use mapping, and then use absurd, right? Use truncate and insert, and then use absurd. Okay, all of this are homework. Please try it out, and then we will meet on Monday. Today's class and yesterday's class recording I will share in the group. Give me some time. I will share it, right? So that's all for today's class, guys. We'll meet next week, Monday. Thank you so much for your time. 9:30 p.m. IST. We'll meet on Monday. Bye. See you.
Abhishek, I have a doubt. Like in the ADF screen, like can we publish only the data set? Like when we are changing data set and the pipeline, right? So see, right now you have a pipeline unsaved and a data set unsaved. Like only we get an option to publish all, right? So can we
Yeah,
just
specific pipeline cannot be published. You need to publish all. So suppose
okay
if you
and
say that I have 10 pipeline and I want to publish only one, that cannot be done. But using Git, that can be done, which I will show you going forward.
okay. Even the data set you have, right? The DS underscore SQL. If you want to save that alone, that is also not
No,
possible.
no, no. Saving or publishing an indivisible thing is not possible. You need to publish all.
Okay.
Okay, guys. So that's all for today's class. Let's meet next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Abhishek.
Bye. Bye.